They say you don't truly see people until the mask slips. I learned that the hard way, sitting in my own living room, watching my son Stephen shrink into silence while his wife, Ashley, tore me apart with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. She sat there, legs crossed, confidence dripping from her like perfume, surrounded by the glow of birthday candles and the laughter of guests who didn't realize the war that was quietly starting at that table, and Stephen, my boy, my only boy, sat there saying nothing, just staring at his plate, cowardly, small. In that moment, something cold and hard settled in my chest, something I hadn't felt since the jungles of Vietnam. The old Marine in me began to stir. I stood up slowly, the chair legs scraping the hardwood like a warning. I looked Ashley dead in the eye, her smile faltering for half a second before she caught herself. "Thank you for those kind words, Ashley," I said evenly, my voice calm, steady, Marine steady. But inside, the storm had already begun, because 3 hours earlier, I'd found something that changed everything. My Purple Heart was gone. That medal had survived mortar fire, monsoon rains, and 54 years of dust and memory. But it didn't survive Ashley Johnson. She thought I was just some old man fading into the wallpaper of my own life. But she didn't know the kind of man she was dealing with. Let me tell you about Ashley Johnson. Married my son on June 14th, 2019. A date that used to mean something to our family. She was a real estate agent out of Phoenix, all fake tan and leased luxury, parading around town in a white BMW X5, $497 a month, probably more than her character was worth. Online, she was famous in her own mind, 45,000 followers hanging onto every filtered word of her success mindset. And yet, behind the phone screen and the perfect teeth, there was something rotten. It started small comments that brushed against me like paper cuts. "Look at these participation trophy heroes." She'd laugh during dinner, scrolling through Facebook posts from Memorial Day, acting like they saved the world. My fork would freeze halfway to my mouth, and Stephen, my son, my flesh and blood, would say nothing. Just chew, just swallow, just shrink. 3 weeks before my birthday, we were at their place for dinner. Ashley was giddy, flaunting her latest commission check, $42,000 for selling some tech executive's mansion in Scottsdale. She waved that check like a flag in my face. "You know what, Chuck," she said, pointing that perfectly manicured finger at me. "Your generation had it easy. Free college, cheap houses, pensions. We actually have to work for what we earn." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. I didn't tell her about the 2 years I spent crawling through jungle mud, about the shrapnel still lodged in my shoulder like a rusted reminder of loyalty. I didn't tell her about Tommy Martinez, my best friend, who died in my arms on March 15th, 1969. His blood had soaked my uniform, and his last words were my name. No, I said nothing, but something inside me cracked that night. Then came the TikTok videos. Boomer reality check, she called it. 17 smug little clips mocking everything I'd bled for: honor, discipline, respect. One video got 23,000 likes. She was standing in her kitchen with a designer coffee cup, laughing. "These old guys want parades for following orders. You weren't saving democracy. You were just government employees with guns." When Stephen showed me that video, chuckling like it was a harmless joke, that's when I knew I'd lost him. Whatever part of him once respected me had died in the algorithm. But the real blow came the night of my birthday. The house was empty, the laughter gone, the air heavy with that kind of silence that follows betrayal. I went upstairs to my bedroom, to the mahogany case that had sat on my dresser since the day I came home from Vietnam. Inside was my Purple Heart, my Bronze Star, and a letter from President Nixon himself. Only the medal was missing. I'm old, not senile. I know exactly where I keep my history. I tore that room apart. Drawers, closets. Under the bed, nothing. Then I remembered Ashley had asked to use my bathroom earlier that afternoon. 10 minutes, she'd said, 10 minutes alone upstairs. When I went back to the kitchen, her Louis Vuitton purse was sitting on the counter. $1,890 retail. I wasn't snooping. I was just moving it to wipe the surface down. The bag tipped over, and something metallic clinked against the tile. I froze. My heart started to pound, not with fear, but with the kind of focus you only get when your training kicks in. I reached inside, and there it was, my Purple Heart, wrapped in a Kleenex-like trash, and beside it, an eBay receipt. Authentic Vietnam War Purple Heart medal. It said, starting bid $2, 500. Buy it now, $3, 200. The description, rare Vietnam Purple Heart from estate sale. Perfect for collectors. Certificate of authenticity included. Certificate of authenticity from an estate sale. Like I was already dead, I felt the kind of anger that makes your vision narrow, but anger's a weapon, and a Marine never fires blind. So I took photos, every detail. Then I put it all back exactly as I found it, because I wasn't done. Not even close. You see, Marines don't retreat. We don't surrender, and we damn sure don't let anyone disrespect our fallen brothers. Ashley thought she was playing a game. She didn't know she was lighting a fuse. That night, I started digging. Bank records, insurance claims, VA benefits. What I found made my hands tremble. She'd been stealing from me for months, small amounts, clever enough to slip past casual notice. But it added up to thousands. My medal was just the tip of the iceberg. The next morning, I called her. May 28th, 9:15 a.m. I knew she'd be at her office, probably recording another motivational video about grind culture and morning hustle. Hey, Ashley. I said, keeping my voice calm, professional. It's Chuck. Just wondering if you happened to see my Purple Heart when you were upstairs yesterday. There was a pause. Your what? She said lightly. My Purple Heart. The medal I received in Vietnam. Oh, she said after a beat, feigning confusion. I have no idea what you're talking about. Why would I know anything about your old war stuff? Old war stuff. I'm just asking everyone who was in the house yesterday. Maybe someone moved it by accident. Well, it wasn't me. I was barely upstairs for 5 minutes. Lie. It had been 12. I'd timed it. Okay. I said softly, if you remember anything, let me know. Sure, whatever. Click. 2 hours later, she called again this time, her tone sharpened. Chuck, Stephen told me you've been asking everyone about some missing medal. This is ridiculous. You probably misplaced it. You're 75 years old. I didn't misplace anything, Ashley. Look, I don't appreciate being accused of stealing. I haven't accused anyone. Right. Well, for the record, I don't care about your dusty old medals. They're not worth anything anyway. Not worth anything. That medal represented every drop of blood I'd shed for a country that forgot my name, and she said it wasn't worth anything. Not worth anything, I repeated, a Purple Heart awarded for wounds in combat. Chuck, maybe it's time you stopped living in the past, she sighed. The Vietnam War was what, 60 years ago? Nobody cares anymore. You're not special because you shot people in a jungle. The words hit harder than any bullet I'd ever taken. She didn't know. She couldn't. She'd never seen men dying in the dirt, never carried 12 wounded brothers through gunfire, never prayed for morning. Ashley, I said slowly, I think we should talk in person. No, we shouldn't. I'm busy. I have real work to do. You should find something to do that matters in the real world. Maybe volunteer, but stop expecting everyone to worship you because you wore a uniform half a century ago. Stephen agrees, she added, twisting the knife. We've talked about it. We're worried about you living alone in that big house. Maybe it's time to think about assisted living. Assisted living. That was her angle. Make me sound senile. Discredit me. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Are you? Because losing things and accusing people of theft sounds like the beginning of dementia to me. Dementia. The venom in her voice was sugar-coated, polite, almost sweet. Ashley, I said quietly, I am not losing my mind. I'm saying I know exactly what happened to my Purple Heart. A silence followed, the kind that hums through the phone line like static. I have no idea what that means, she said finally. I think you do. You know what? I'm done with this conversation. Her tone cracked slightly, betraying fear or guilt. You want to play detective? Go ahead, but leave me out of it. What kind of problems are you hiding, Ashley? I asked softly. You mentioned money. That's none of your business, and for the record, you're a burden on this family, Chuck. Stephen and I are trying to build a life, start a family, and we can't do that with you constantly needing attention, a burden. I hung up the phone and stared at my reflection in the window. For a long moment, the old man stared back, wrinkled skin, gray hair, tired eyes. Then something changed. My jaw set, my heart slowed. The Marine stared back. Ashley had taken something sacred. And I was going to take everything she cared about, because in war and in family, there's one rule I've never forgotten. You don't mess with a Marine's honor and walk away clean. Those words kept ricocheting in my skull long after the call ended, like a stuck shell casing clinking in the dark. I could almost hear Ashley's nails tapping against her phone, the way she'd said it, soft, practiced, like she was rehearsing cruelty for the camera. I'd never asked Stephen or Ashley for money. Never once. It wasn't money I wanted from them. It was time. It was the small things that add up to a life. A neighbor to check in on you. A hand to steady you when the world tilts. Stephen used to spend his weekends at my house fixing the plumbing, listening to the same old stories I'd told 1,000 times. He'd come by to mow my lawn, to hold a ladder while I changed a light bulb. He used to occupy those hours because he loved me. Now, according to Ashley, it was babysitting, time he could be spending with his wife, time she believed she deserved. Babysitting you, she'd said, like it was a punchline. Do you see the cruelty in that? Do you? Because I watched it all play out, and I did not believe for a second she was ignorant of what she'd done. I believed she had studied how to cut a man down until he felt small, and then she'd layered on the final humiliation with a smile. Because I don't think you do, she said in that same clipped tone when I pushed back. You're so wrapped up in your glory days that you can't see how selfish you're being. Stephen feels guilty leaving you alone. He's constantly worried about you, and that's not fair to either of us. Fair, always their word, always their plan. Marginalize, gaslight, take. You're right, Ashley. It's not fair. I told her then, letting the words fall slow like a trap. It's not fair that my son married someone who has so little respect for the sacrifices made by better people than herself. She huffed, offended on cue. The line went dead. I let it go for a breath, just long enough to feel the quiet around me thicken. Then I hit record. I'd grown careful with my voice lately. A lifetime in the Corps teaches you to document, to verify. So when I replayed that conversation later, the clipped vowels, the little sneer when she said real work, the way she pressed dementia into the sentence like a finality, it didn't sound like casual cruelty. It sounded like confidence. It sounded rehearsed. It sounded like someone who thought they'd already won. And what I'd found online that afternoon explained everything else. Ashley's eBay profile was a garden of lies wrapped in glossy photos. Username Ashley Lux 32, 37 glowing reviews, 5 stars across the board. That alone might have been suspicious, but not criminal. What made the bile rise in my throat was the pattern. 8 months, military items sold as estate finds, family collections, relics, World War Roman II dog tags sold for $450 on March 15th. A Korean War field jacket sold January 23rd for $675. A Vietnam-era compass sold December 8th for $220. The dates crawled down the page like footprints. I scrolled until my fingers shook and froze on a listing that made the room tilt. My bronze star, posted 3 weeks ago, start bid $800. Description: Vietnam Bronze Star Medal, rare military decoration. Estate sale find, certificate included, 22 watchers. My hands went numb. The bronze star was still supposed to be on the wall, my medal, my history. But the listing text mentioned a certificate that should have been in my file folder, next to the discharge papers and the letter from President Nixon. I thumbed open that folder on my desk, empty slot, a cold, clinical absence. Someone had taken the certificate. This was not a one-off. This was a collection of theft, sewn together with patience and malice. That's when I called my bank. Chase Private Client had been my bank for 32 years. I knew the voice on the other end, warm, competent, someone who saw me as a name with numbers attached. Margaret Davis answered like a friend. Chuck, good to hear from you. What can I do for you today? Pull up my account statements for the past 6 months, I said. I tried to keep my voice level. Old habits. I want to check for anything unusual. There was a tiny pause, the kind you get when a professional starts reading numbers the same way a doctor reads a chart. All right, give me a moment. I listened to the clock move. I looked out the window toward Stephen's house 3 blocks away. I could just make out his car in the driveway, the silhouette of a life that was now, apparently, separate from mine. Margaret's voice came back calm but precise. Chuck, there are a number of ATM withdrawals. You have 2 authorized users on the account. That would explain them. Who's the second authorized user? I asked. She read the name slowly enough that it felt like a verdict. Ashley Johnson, added August 14th, 2023. August 14th. 2 months after my hospital stay for that minor heart episode. I'd been in for 3 days. I'd come home to a house that felt the same and yet was not. I never signed anything authorizing Ashley to touch my account. Margaret, can you calculate the total of those withdrawals over the past 6 months? Her silence this time was shorter. Let me run it. That's $47,347,300. I felt my stomach drop the way it did when mortar rounds started in the distance. A metallic, inevitable swing. Freeze the account, I told her. Remove Ashley Johnson's access. File a fraud report with security. And Margaret, I need printed statements going back 12 months. And if you can, recommend an estate planning attorney. Of course, Chuck. I'll get on it right away. Do you want us to file with law enforcement? She asked. Yes, I said. And Margaret, thank you. That night, I sat in my study with a bottle of Jameson, the same whiskey Tommy Martinez and I used to share in Saigon when we had 3-day passes and thought the world would never end. I poured 2 fingers and held the glass like it was a grenade. The flame of the alcove lamp threw familiar shadows across the medals on my wall, tiny suns of bronze and ribbon. $47,000. Memory turned to arithmetic. Betrayal turned to a ledger. I did something I hadn't done in 15 years. I dug out the old black book of contacts from my desk drawer, the one with names scrawled in code and trust sewn into the pages. The phone felt weighted in my hand when I dialed Lieutenant Colonel Rita Brown, retired, living in Colorado Springs now, a woman who'd taught me more about strategy than any book. Retired or not, once a Marine, always a Marine. Chuck Williams. Her voice came through like a salute. I'll be damned. How are you, old friend? Not good, I said, and I told her everything. The birthday party, the Purple Heart, the purse, the eBay listings, the bank withdrawals, the forged documents. I left nothing out. As I spoke, the old surgical calm came back, telling someone else the facts made them weaponizable. She didn't hesitate. What do you want to do about it? She asked. I want to destroy her, I said, and the words tasted like iron. Rita understood that language. Then let's get to work. She called me back before dawn the next morning, 0600 sharp military time. Chuck, she said, breathless with the kind of energy you only get when you've been digging in the dark all night. I spent all night on this. It's worse than we thought. Worse. Those 2 syllables hit like someone ramming a door open. She's running this across 3 states, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado. 2 years of sales, over $90,000 in revenue from stolen military items, CPF accounts, quick flips to buyers, shell accounts to launder the cash. And you were right about the Peterson listing. It wasn't just a field jacket, Chuck. It was Frank Peterson's Medal of Honor. My jaw locked. Frank Peterson? The neighbor who used to stop by with a thermos of coffee and a grin like a cracked walnut. Frank, who died last November and entrusted family members to clean out his attic. Medal of Honor. The highest decoration, not a trinket, not a pawn, a family's soul in metal form. She listed it as a reproduction to avoid suspicion. Rita told me. Sold it for $1,200 to some collector in Texas. She's been playing everyone for fools. That word, desecration, came so fast I barely recognized the tremor in my voice as I said it. Rita didn't stop there. Insurance fraud, Chuck. She's been filing false claims on your VA benefits, claiming she's your caregiver, submitting forged reports that say you need 20 hours a week of personal care. The VA paid her about $18,000 over the past 14 months. She rerouted your benefit increases to accounts she controls after she submitted forged power of attorney documents 8 months ago. Cognitive decline that wasn't an insult on the phone. It was part of a plan to seize control. My hands got cold. All this time, she'd been building the narrative, the friendly caretaker who knew the family's secrets, the woman who could smile at a funeral and sell the corpse's medals the next day. Planned, patient, predictable as a trap. Good, I said into the handset. Document everything, every transaction, every forged signature. I've got contacts at the VA Inspector General, and I called the FBI last night. The FBI? Rita echoed. Her voice sounded like she approved. Yes, Agent Sarah Martinez, a financial crimes division. She handles veteran fraud. Saying her name out loud tightened a band in my chest, like a belt being cinched. Rita's breath came shorter. I'm pulling in a few people. We need to map her network, find the buyers, find the shell accounts, and Chuck, don't tell Stephen anything yet. Not until we know where he stands. Her last sentence landed like a punch I'd been dodging for months. Don't tell Stephen. Don't wake the sleeping son who had already chosen silence. I felt the house press in around me, the grandfather clock ticking like a metronome, counting down to some inevitable collision. The whiskey in my glass glinted like an ember. I wanted to call my son, to drag him into the room and slap him with the truth until his face was red with shame. But Rita was right. I needed evidence. I needed allies with badges. I needed ruin served up neat and undeniable. At 2 a.m., when the house was a small breathing thing, my phone buzzed with an email from Rita. Subject line, preliminary findings, buyer list attached. I opened it with a hand that no longer trembled. The spreadsheet filled the screen, buyer names, sale prices, shipping addresses. The last column, recipient account, had a string of bank numbers and a name that made my vision tunnel. Stephen Michael Williams. My hands gave way, and the phone almost slipped from my fingers. The name stared back at me from the PDF, cold and clinical. My son's name, tied to transfers that traced back to some of the sales Rita had flagged. I couldn't tell if the world tilted because of the whiskey, the betrayal, or the sickness blooming in my chest. The room went hollow, sound thinning to a hum. Outside, somewhere in the night, a delivery truck rolled past with a thud that sounded like a closing coffin lid. I sat there, the glow of the lamp painting diagnosis on my hands. My mind ran through the possibilities like a war game. Stephen colluded and covered for her. Stephen was naive and had been manipulated. Stephen had been siphoned a share for his silence. None of them were good. None were forgivable, My phone buzzed again, a number I didn't recognize. I answered it on reflex. A woman's voice, professional, precise. "Mr. Williams, this is Agent Sarah Martinez with the FBI Financial Crimes Division. We'd like to meet. We've opened a preliminary case file based on information provided by your bank and the VA. We also have a lead on a storage unit in Phoenix associated with Ashley Lux, 32. We need your authorization to obtain it, and, sir," she paused. Somewhere behind her the sound of a printer word. My breath came in little metallic pulls. "Go on," I said. "There's evidence there," she said quietly. "Boxes labeled with veteran names, photographs, shipped items. And Mr. Williams, your son's name appears in several recipient records. We need to know if that was authorized." Authorized. I laughed once, a short sound with no humor. "No," I said, the single word a stone. "It wasn't authorized." There was a silence, and then the agent's voice changed, the flatness replacing the soft procedural tone. "Sir, you should stay where you are. We're arranging for local agents to meet you tonight. There may be arrests. Bring anything you have, documents, photos, recordings." I hung up the phone, and the house felt suddenly too small for the sound of my life. On the desk, the Jameson caught the lamplight and turned it into a drop of night. My medals glinted like the eyes of a jury. Outside, the last car went by, and the street lights blinked down like judges' lamps. I thought of Tommy Martinez, dead these 50 years, and the last look he gave me on that riverbank. I thought of Frank Peterson's Medal of Honor, sold for a pittance by a woman who posed for Instagram with a latte. I thought of the son who'd sat at my birthday table like he could watch me be dismantled and still sleep at night. The knock came at the door then, a single sharp sound that flung every nerve in my body to attention. I set the glass down carefully, the whiskey still cooling the inside of my palm, and walked to the door with a slow, steady step. I opened it. 2 agents stood on my porch, badges flashing dull in the porch light. Behind them, Rita leaned over the hood of a car, eyes narrowed, holding a thick manila envelope. "I hope you're ready, Chuck," she said, and when I took the envelope from her hands, my fingers found a photograph, my Purple Heart, my bronze star, a slip of paper with a shipping label, and a name scrawled across it that I had not expected to see, Stephen's handwriting. She looked up from her phone, irritation flickering into mild curiosity, but she had no idea what was about to unfold. I steadied my voice, feeling the weight of every eye in that hall on me. "When you wear this uniform," I said, tapping the medals on my chest, "you learn that honor isn't just a word. It's a promise to your brothers and sisters in arms, a promise to your country, a promise to never forget." The silence that followed was thick, reverent. You could hear the faint hum of the ceiling fans and the distant traffic outside. Ashley leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, her eyes darting around the room as if she was the only one who didn't belong. I looked straight at her, but sometimes, I continued, people forget. Sometimes those closest to us forget. I paused, letting that hang in the air. Stephen shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Ashley frowned. "You see," I said slowly, "honor doesn't die on the battlefield. It lives, or it rots, inside the choices we make every single day." My throat was dry, but I didn't reach for water. I wanted them to hear every syllable. I called this gathering today to share an announcement about my will, about my legacy. A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ashley straightened, her body language changing, alert now, calculating. For years, I said, I believed that legacy was something you left behind for your family, for your children, but I was wrong. Legacy isn't about blood, it's about principle. I opened the manila envelope, the sound of paper crisp and deliberate in the silence. As of Saturday, my estate, valued at $2 million, will go entirely to veteran organizations across this country. The air shifted. Even the veterans looked surprised. I could feel Ashley's eyes burning holes into me. What? She hissed, loud enough for those around her to hear. I ignored her, continuing, every dollar, every asset, every acre donated in honor of those who served with integrity. I looked down at the front row, at Rita, at Bobby, at the men who'd fought beside me, and then back at Ashley. Because honor, I said quietly, isn't inherited, it's earned. The scrape of Ashley's chair echoed through the hall. She shot to her feet, red-faced. This is ridiculous. You can't just. Her voice cracked as every veteran in the room turned toward her. Ashley, I said softly into the microphone, why don't you tell everyone how much you've earned from your eBay business? She froze. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked afraid. What are you talking about? She stammered. Oh, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I said, my voice steady, cold. World War Roman II dog tags, Korean War jackets, Vietnam-era medals, items stolen from veterans' families sold under your username, Ashley Lux 32. Gasps filled the hall. Stephen turned pale. Dad, what is this? He asked, his voice trembling. I ignored him. You made over $90 zero selling stolen memories. I continued. But it wasn't enough, was it? You had to steal from me too. You forged my signature, took nearly $50 zero from my account, filed fake claims with the VA in my name. Ashley's lips parted, but no words came out. Stephen turned to her, his expression twisted in disbelief. Ashley, is that true? She didn't answer. Her hands shook as she fumbled with her purse. I took a step closer to the microphone. You see, Ashley, when you steal from a Marine, you don't just steal money. You steal honor. I looked to the back of the room. Agent Martinez, that name hit her like a gunshot. Two men in plain clothes moved from the back, badges flashing. Ashley stumbled backward, panic breaking across her face. No, this is insane. Stephen, do something. But Stephen was frozen, staring at her like he didn't recognize the woman beside him. Ashley Johnson, Agent Martinez said, her voice clear and commanding. You're under arrest for multiple counts of wire fraud, bank fraud, and theft from veteran estates. The room erupted into low murmurs and stunned silence. Ashley tried to bolt, but Martinez and her agents moved fast. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the hall. I watched as Ashley's designer purse hit the floor, scattering lipstick, keys, and a phone that still displayed her Instagram feed. Perfect photos, perfect lies. This is a mistake, she shouted as the agents read her rights. I didn't do anything wrong. Stephen just sat there, his head in his hands. I stepped toward him, every step measured, deliberate. Son, I said quietly, there are battles we fight in uniform and battles we fight at home, You chose to look away. He didn't look up. Didn't say a word. I turned back to the microphone one last time, to my brothers and sisters in arms. I said, voice low, heavy with emotion, this is what happens when we stop holding people accountable for dishonor. We lose more than medals. We lose our soul. Ashley was being led out of the room, her voice growing smaller with each step. Cameras clicked as local reporters tipped off by Martinez captured every second. When the doors closed behind her, the hall fell silent again. I looked down at the will, still open on the podium, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. Then, from the back of the hall, Agent Martinez approached. "Mr. Williams," she said quietly, "we got her." I nodded. "Thank you, Agent." But as she handed me a folder, her expression darkened. "There's something else," she said. "We found a second account, transfers still active, and your son's signature is on every one." My breath caught. I turned slowly toward Stephen, who finally looked up, tears in his eyes. "Dad," he whispered, "I can explain." But before he could say another word, the room filled with the sound of Martinez's radio crackling to life. "Copy that," a voice said through static. "We have a second suspect in custody, male, attempting to flee in a silver BMW registered to Ashley Johnson." I stared at Stephen. The room went silent again. My heart felt heavy, but my voice stayed calm. "Looks like you're not done explaining, son." And just like that, the son I thought I'd raised, the family I thought I'd built was gone, but justice had finally come home. I've always believed that age teaches you two things: patience and how to see through people. I'm 75 years old now, a retired Marine, and I've been blessed not by luck, but by a lifetime of hard work, smart investments, and more discipline than comfort. Over the years, I built a quiet fortune, $6, $2 million, not to flaunt, but to leave behind something meaningful. Family was supposed to be the anchor in that plan, but life has a cruel way of testing the very people you trust most. That afternoon, sunlight spilled through the dusty windows of VFW Post 1234, catching the edges of old medals framed on the wall. The air smelled of coffee, floor wax, and the faint metallic scent of pride. 47 veterans sat around me, men who had bled, sweated, and cried for this country. My son Stephen sat in the second row, pale, nervous, fiddling with his wedding band. Beside him sat Ashley, my daughter-in-law. Perfect posture, perfect smile, and dollar signs glowing behind her eyes. Some of you know I've been blessed financially. I began, my voice echoing against the wood, paneled walls. At 75, I've accumulated significant wealth, $6.2 million to be exact. Ashley's eyes locked on mine, wide, glittering, calculating. Family, the word used to mean something. People who lift you when you fall, who stand beside you when the storm hits. I looked straight at Stephen, my only son, my blood. His face was ghost white, because he already knew where this was going. But sometimes, I continued, family disappoints us. Sometimes the people we love most choose greed over loyalty, selfishness over honor. Ashley leaned toward Stephen, whispering just loud enough for the microphone I'd hidden in my jacket to catch. "What's he talking about?" "I don't know," Stephen whispered back. I opened the manila envelope on the table. The paper inside rustled like the final turn of a blade. "This," I said, "is my new will, executed 3 days ago, witnessed, notarized, binding." Ashley's fake smile twitched. Her fingers tightened around her purse. "I'm not sick. I'm not dying," I said softly. "I'm simply a man who's learned some hard truths about the people closest to him." "Chuck, what are you doing?" Stephen asked, panic leaking into his voice. "I'm doing what Marines do, son." I turned to face him fully. "I'm completing the mission." Rita Brown, retired lieutenant colonel, seated near the back, nodded slowly, pride in her eyes. "You see, brothers," I continued, "there are people in this world who look at veterans and see easy targets. They see weakness where there's strength. They see old men where there are warriors." Ashley's mask began to crack. Her lips trembled. Her eyes darted to the door. "There are people who steal from veterans," I said, "who forge documents, who lie to federal agencies, who sell our medals to the highest bidder." Ashley stood abruptly. "What the hell are you talking about? Sit down, Ashley," I commanded, my tone pure Marine. "I don't have to listen to this." "Oh, you do," I said calmly, "because what I'm about to read affects you directly." Agent Martinez, sitting quietly in the back till now, shifted closer to the exit, just in case. "This new will," I said, holding it up, "contains some surprises, some justice, some long, overdue consequences." I took a breath, slow and deliberate. The room was still. Even the ceiling fans seemed to stop turning. "Before I read it," I said, "I want everyone to understand why these changes were necessary." I reached into my jacket, pulled out my phone, and scrolled to the recording. "Ashley," I said, locking eyes with her, "you remember our conversation 3 days ago, the one where you called me a burden?" Her face went white. "I recorded it." She froze. "In fact," I continued, "I recorded several conversations. Would you like to hear what you really think about veterans?" Her jaw dropped. I pressed play. Her voice filled the VFW hall, sharp, cruel, venomous. "Chuck, no offense, but you're a burden on this family. Stephen and I can't build a life with you constantly needing attention and support." 47 veterans heard every word. No one moved, no one breathed. Ashley's recorded voice went on, "It's not about money, it's about emotional energy. Stephen spends half his weekends babysitting you." Babysitting. The word hit me like shrapnel. The recording continued, echoing through the hall like acid rain. "Maybe it's time you stop living in the past. Nobody cares about your war stories. You're not special because you followed orders and shot people in a jungle. That did it." The air cracked with tension. Every veteran in the room rose to their feet. 47 men, silent, furious. "Sit down," I barked, my Marine voice cutting through the rage. They obeyed instantly. Ashley stumbled backward, trembling. "You're all insane. It's just an old man with hurt feelings. Just an old man." Rita Brown stood, her silver insignia catching the light. "Ma'am, this old man saved 12 American lives in Vietnam. What have you done for your country?" Ashley's voice broke. "I don't have to justify myself to you people. You people," Bobby Thompson growled from the front row. "You mean veterans, the people who bled so you could live soft." "I haven't stolen anything." I held up a printed eBay listing, the paper trembling slightly in my hand. "Vietnam War Purple Heart Medal, starting bid $2.5. hundred, listed by Ashley Lux 32. The room erupted, shouts, curses, chairs scraping. I slammed my hand against the podium. Order, order. Ashley's face turned crimson. That's not mine. I'm being framed. Really, I said. Agent Martinez, would you care to comment? She stepped forward, her FBI badge glinting. Ashley Johnson, I'm Special Agent Sarah Martinez, Financial Crimes Division. We've been investigating you for veteran fraud. Stephen's jaw dropped. FBI, Dad, what the hell is going on? Your wife, I said coldly, has stolen over $400,000 from veterans and their families across 4 states. Ashley screamed, that's a lie, is it? I held up more documents, bank records, forged power of attorney forms, unauthorized withdrawals, fake signatures claiming I had dementia, false insurance claims saying you cared for me 20 hours a week. Agent Martinez unfolded her own file. We've also connected you to the theft of 63 military medals, including a Medal of Honor belonging to Frank Peterson. The name hit the room like a detonation. Peterson had been one of us, a Marine's Marine. Ashley backed away, shaking her head. You can't prove any of this. Oh, we can, Martinez said. And we will. Ashley snapped, screaming at the room. You're all pathetic, living in the past, worshipping old wars that don't matter. Silence. Heavy, suffocating. You know what Vietnam was? She hissed. A pointless war. You killed people for nothing. A Navy vet near the front began to cry, his mangled hand trembling on his cane. Stephen rose, trembling. Ashley, stop. Don't you tell me to stop, she shrieked. Your father is destroying our future over some stupid pieces of metal. Stephen's voice steadied. Those metals represent honor, sacrifice, things you'll never understand. He took off his wedding ring, set it gently on the chair beside him. We're done, Ashley, today. Her breath caught. You can't be serious. He looked down. I should have defended him months ago. I'm ashamed of myself. Her world crumbled before her eyes. Agent Martinez stepped closer. Ashley Johnson, you're under arrest for mail fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, and violation of federal laws protecting veterans' benefits. She screamed as the cuffs clicked shut. You can't do this. I know my rights. The room watched in silence as she fought against the inevitable. Stephen whispered, broken, You stole from my father, from dead heroes. Ashley tried to plead, to spin, to lie, but it was over. And then I dropped the final revelation. When the FBI led her away, I called for silence again. Before you all leave, there's something else you should know. I opened a weathered folder, military records from 1968. Firebase Alpha, 20 miles northwest of Saigon. My squad was pinned down under enemy fire. 12 wounded men. I carried each one to safety. I turned a photo toward the crowd. One of them was Corporal Danny Johnson, 19, from Phoenix. Took 2 bullets to the chest. I carried him 600 yards under fire. The name hung in the air. Ashley Johnson. Danny Johnson survived, went home, married, had a daughter. My voice cracked, named her Ashley. Gasps rippled through the hall. She never knew that the man she stole from was the one who saved her father's life. The silence was absolute. I lifted Danny's letter, handwritten, yellowed with time. Before he died in 2020, he wrote me a letter thanking me for saving him, telling me about his daughter, how proud he was. Stephen buried his face in his hands. "So you see," I said softly, "I kept my promise to Danny. I carried his daughter too, not through a battlefield this time, but through the wreckage of her own choices." My throat tightened. "That's why I'm not pressing additional charges, because somewhere out there, Danny's watching, and he's ashamed enough already." Stephen sobbed quietly. "Dad, I'm sorry." I put a hand on his shoulder. "Then make it right, son. Help the FBI. Start over." He nodded. 3 months later, Ashley Johnson was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Stephen cooperated, avoided prison, and began rebuilding what was left of his life. Every cent of my $6, $2 million, went to veteran programs across 12 states. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the past creeps in, I think about Danny Johnson, 19 years old, bleeding in that rice paddy, looking up at me with trust. I carried him home once, and in a way I carried him home again. But some debts can only be repaid in silence. I stared at Derek across the dim kitchen table, the silence thick as static. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound between us, a low mechanical heartbeat echoing the tension in my chest. His eyes darted everywhere but mine, the way a liar's eyes always do when the walls start closing in. I'd seen that look before, years ago, in the hospital when he begged for forgiveness after crashing my car. Back then I believed the tears, but tonight I could see the performance. Every tremble, every breath rehearsed. "You think I'm stupid, don't you?" I whispered, my voice quiet enough that it scared even me. Derek froze. The color drained from his face as I slid the spiral notebook across the table, my proof. Pages upon pages of handwritten notes, dates, and transcripts of every phone call, every lie he'd spun like cobwebs around me. He reached for it, but I slammed my palm down on the cover. "Don't touch that." The overhead light flickered, throwing our shadows against the cracked wall. I'd memorized those shadows, one tall, rigid, holding years of disappointment, the other slouched, defensive, trembling under the weight of guilt. My son and me, the father and the boy who thought he could gamble with blood and come out clean. He opened his mouth, tried to speak, but the words tangled in his throat. "Dad, you told me 50,000 in gambling debts." I cut him off. My tone wasn't loud, but it had that edge, the one that made even the dog hide when he heard it. "You said they'd come for you if you didn't pay. You said you needed help, so I helped. I sold the last piece of your mother's jewelry, the one thing she wanted you to have." Derek's jaw tightened. A flash of guilt crossed his face, but just as quickly it vanished, replaced by that slick grin I'd come to despise. "I didn't have a choice," he said. "You don't know what it's like." I leaned back slowly, the chair creaking under my weight. "No, son, you don't know what it's like." I let the silence stretch until he squirmed. "You don't know what it's like to work 40 years, to bury your wife, to look your child in the eyes and see everything you failed to protect." He looked away again, not out of shame, but calculation. He was measuring me, trying to see how far he could still push. "I was going to pay you back," he muttered. "I just needed more time." The laugh that escaped me was hollow, bitter. "Pay me back? With what? Another lie?" I pushed the notebook toward him again. "You've been siphoning money from my account for months, Derek. You didn't owe the bookies, you were the bookie." His eyes shot up, shock, Panic, then rage. You went through my accounts. I went through everything. I stood up, the motion deliberate, slow, the kind of slow that makes a man nervous. You used my name, my credit, my savings. You thought the old man wouldn't notice because he's too sentimental, too forgiving. I leaned in close enough to smell the whiskey on his breath. You thought wrong. He shoved the chair back and stood, his voice rising. You don't understand. You've always tried to control me. This is what I had to do to be free of you. I shook my head, almost pitying him. Free of me. I said softly, you were free, Derek. You were always free. But freedom without integrity, that's just another kind of prison. The storm outside rattled the windows. A streak of lightning flared across the kitchen, illuminating his face, twisted with anger and fear. The moment hung there, suspended in electric silence. Then I said it. The sentence that ended everything between us. I called them. He blinked. Called who? The authorities. I said, watching his throat tighten. The ones you thought you could outsmart. The ones who've been looking for you since you started laundering through the bar accounts. They'll be here soon. His expression shifted disbelief to fury, to something hollow and broken. You'd ruin your own son. No, I said. You did that all by yourself. The sound of sirens began faint in the distance, building like an approaching storm. Derek backed toward the door, his eyes wild, searching for an escape that wasn't there. Dad, he whispered, trembling. Please don't do this. I wanted to say something fatherly, something kind, but there was nothing left to give. Just years of exhaustion and one final truth. You took everything, Derek, but tonight you give it back. The sirens grew louder. Red and blue light flickered through the rain, streaked window, painting the room in guilt and regret. Derek stood frozen as the knock thundered at the door. I didn't move. I just whispered, "It's over, son." He turned to me one last time, eyes wet, voice cracking. "I hate you, I know," I said, "but someday you'll understand." The officers burst in, the storm howled outside, and as they led him away, I sat back down in the same creaking chair, staring at the empty spot across from me. The spiral notebook lay open, its ink bleeding in the rain that dripped from the ceiling. Some stories don't end with revenge. Some end with silence, and the sound of a father realizing he's lost his son long before the sirens ever came. And as the red and blue lights faded into the storm, I sat there alone, the chair rocking gently beneath me, the same chair my son once fixed for me when he was 12. Funny how time turns full circle, how mercy becomes a memory, and love becomes a wound that never quite heals. I thought revenge would bring peace. It didn't. It just reminded me that sometimes justice sounds like silence and looks a lot like goodbye. This was my story, my truth, my revenge. Subscribe for more stories that remind you. Karma always remembers.